10 Crazy Facts About Charles Manson. In the autumn of 1969, the gruesome Tate LaBianca murders dropped a veil of fear over Los Angeles. One of the victims, the actress Sharon Tate, was visibly pregnant. Smeared on the walls of the crime scenes in the victim's blood were the words "pigs, rise," and "death to pigs." On the refrigerator more blood had been used to scrawl the cryptic phrase "Helter Skelter." Manson and several of his followers, members of his self-described family who had come to think of him in messianic terms, were arrested for the murders later that year and brought to trial in the summer of 1970. The ensuing media circus turned Manson into a bizarre cultural icon. Today, still in prison over 4 decades after the murders, Manson continues to hold sway over a handful of followers. And he remains a cultural presence. To a few, he is a herald of revolution. To others, he's a cosmic punchline, whose insane proclamations keep providing fodder for existential laughter. To most, he is the very symbol of evil. He is, for better or worse, one of the more fascinating figures of the 20th century. 10. He never killed anyone himself. It seems that Charles Manson, the man who for many personifies murder in the 20th century, has never actually physically killed anyone. In fact, he wasn't present at either of the murders for which he was famously convicted. Although he participated in the binding of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, he split before the actual killing began. And he was completely absent during the Tate murders. 9. He was once known as No Name Maddox. Manson was born in a Cincinnati hospital to an unmarried 16-year-old named Kathleen Maddox. She did not identify the father, nor immediately name her child, so the infant was registered as No Name Maddox. A few weeks later the child was named Charles Millis Maddox and was eventually given the last name Manson during Kathleen's quickie marriage to a man named William Manson. 8. He was once happily married. At 21, just out on parole, Manson met and subsequently married Rosalie Willis, with whom he seemed to find real happiness. He and Rosalie, 3 months pregnant, left to start a new life in Southern California. Unfortunately, they did so in a car stolen in Ohio, a charge that landed him back on probation and eventually back in jail, after he failed to show up for a hearing on a similar charge in Indiana. Rosalie came to see him regularly for a while, but eventually took up with another man and divorced Manson, shattering any chance he may have had of a traditional domestic life. 7. He learned how to win friends and influence people. Manson was in and out of prison all his life, but far from being a criminal mastermind, he was a small-time, non-violent offender who seemed content to live a lifestyle built around his institutionalization. While imprisoned, he took classes given by the Dale Carnegie Institute, based on Carnegie's best-selling self-help book How to Win Friends and Influence People. Manson later became an expert at such manipulative tactics, studying the mind control methods of Scientology and its even creepier splinter group, the Process Church of the Final Judgment. 6. He was taught how to play guitar by criminal royalty. Alvin "Creepy" Karpis was a criminal genius, the brains behind the Marbaka gang and a former public enemy number 1. He was considered by his criminal peers to be one of the keenest minds in the underworld. Manson met Karpis when both were imprisoned in the McNeil Island Penitentiary. A bit of a prison renaissance man, Karpis played guitar quite well and was known to teach other inmates. When Charlie asked for lessons, Karpis initially thought Manson too lazy and shiftless to put in the effort. He was surprised when Charlie, whom he also described as having a pleasing personality, although meek and mild became proficient enough to accompany himself, and even write his own songs. He also described Manson's singing voice as creepy, implying that the world was only a few misfiring neurons from avoiding a murderous psychopath, but gaining another Dan Fogelberg. 5. He was more Appalachia than California. Despite his popular association with California, specifically Los Angeles, Manson did not make it out there until he was 32 and spent most of his time in the state behind bars. He was raised in Kentucky and West Virginia and was shaped more by Depression-era Appalachia than the flower power vibe pervading California at the time. His uncle, who was one of the few male role models he had, was an angry and recalcitrant defender of the Confederacy. Distrustful of Yankees, he frequently encouraged Charlie to resist their attempts at using public schools for indoctrination in their ideas. 4. He had extensive celebrity connections. Out of prison in 1967, Charlie put his skills to work, and soon developed a coterie of fawning young women, many just over 18. One of the first to be intrigued by Manson was Deirdre Lansbury, daughter of Angela Lansbury, famous as the star of Murder, She Wrote, and The Manchurian Candidate. A couple of Manson's followers were picked up by Dennis Wilson, a member of the Beach Boys. Wilson was known to hang out on the fringes of the Los Angeles counterculture, looking for a good time. Taking the girls back to his beach house, they called Charlie, who showed up with drugs, his guitar, and a few more willing young women. 3. Though he's known as a Beatles fanboy, he preferred Bing Crosby. In 1967, the Beatles, then at the peak of their popularity, released an album simply called The Beatles, but commonly known as the White Album. Charlie told his congregation that the Beatles were the four horsemen of the apocalypse described in the Book of Revelation, citing their guitars as their breastplates of fire. Charlie didn't even much care for the Beatles. He was older than most of his followers and stated in several interviews that he, like other members of his generation, preferred Bing Crosby, Perry Como, and cowboy balladeers like Frankie Lane. 2. His music has been widely covered. Manson's own music was as manipulative as he was meant to ensnare. He developed a folky style, and sprinkled it with nebulous lyrical forays into the kind of dime store mysticism popular with the hippies. He never found musical success in his time as a free man, but after the murders, his infamy created a kind of fascination with his songwriting. His songs have since been covered by a wide variety of artists, including Guns N' Roses, Marilyn Manson, Red Cross, and actor/biological curiosity Crispin Glover. 1. His prison interviews are pure performance art. There is debate on Manson's mental health. Some think he's insane, others think he's acting. He's certainly not normal, but whether his rambling, hyperactive monologues are forced or not, only Charlie really knows. Regardless, he became, about 15 years into his incarceration, an instant boost to the careers of television journalists like Tom Snyder and Diane Sawyer. A half hour of Charlie spinning his particular brand of Jabberwocky was the answer. Viewers would flock to their television sets, ready to take in the antics of the Pied Piper of criminal insanity. We hope you enjoy our list of the 10 crazy facts about Charles Manson.